en la ciencia.
I don't think that's a relevant question.
Perfect.
I don't think so. This is about our lives. This is about American lives. And it should not be partisan. Science should not be partisan.
At some point, the daily drumbeat of depression and terror veers into panic porn. FDR said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
I think the question is,
News sources have to rein it in.
I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
We need the news to calm down and treat us like adults.
Hey, what's going on, everybody, and thanks for joining me again. This is a real special episode because, as Will has reminded me, this is the first time I'm totally ignorant. The only thing I know about today's topic is that Britney Spears likes to sing about it, and Leo, young baby Leo, looks sexy at the front of a ship. Now, today's topic is about the Titanic. Apparently, there's some real wild stuff. But before we get into that, I'd like to introduce my guest. If you've noticed, I got a real sexy Rethink Tank face mask. Dr. Fauci saw the groundhog saw a shadow, and that means there's a second wave coming. If you need a new Rethink Tank mask and look dapper and sexy like this, reach out to me, let me know, let's make it happen. Now, on that note, let me get this nasty thing off, because I'm not a fan of masks. But I've got my best friend, Will Hubert, and a good friend from high school, Mike Ames. We're here to learn about the Titanic. Like I said, apparently some real crazy stuff happened, and I'm pretty ignorant to it. So I'm going to give the reins to Mike, and he's going to take us on a journey. So buckle up and get ready. What's up, Mike?
I've had a couple drinks, probably definitely over the limit. So let's say you said you're. By the way, I love this like crochet felt blue. Like I'm on the ocean. Like I feel like I'll be submerged in freezing water and fucking die.
How appropriate.
I feel like Grandma knitted it too.
Yeah, right. That was her intent behind it. Was she's like, this reminds me of the icy cold waters of the fucking Atlantic. We can say fuck, right? That's
Yep.
okay. All right, cool.
Let it roll, man.
All right, so I have a weird thing with the Titanic. I really genuinely do. Is that like every year or so, it just sparks in me that I need to know more about it. I need to like research into it. And so in a completely drunken rampage, I forced a couple people around a bonfire, him included, to listen to just my crazy just obsession with the sinking of the Titanic, which is actually just like, it's just ridiculous how big the community is. Like in terms of people.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I need to turn the fan off. I just realized the fan's running.
It's already fucking.
Bro,
it's all going downhill.
It's all
going downhill.
It's funny because he says like it's a community. It's like a Facebook post community. Like we're all like sharing posts and shit about the Titanic.
It's ridiculous.
It's very word of mouth, very low key.
What? No, the Titanic community is ridiculous. Like, I'm going to actually skip way far ahead in my notes and say that the Titanic community is actually, like, people go tooth and nail at each other over this stuff. Like, it is actually that involved. It's actually pretty dumb.
Because even my ignorant experience, just through, what my exposure to you guys, there's a lot of layers to it. That's why there's so much.
Well, the thing that makes the Titanic so unbelievably famous outside of the movie is that people think like, oh, the Titanic, what do they know about it? That there weren't enough lifeboats and people said it was an unsinkable ship and that's cool, whatever, But it's like, it became really, really famous. Sure, yes, because of the movie, and that did a lot for it. But the thing is that when you actually dissect everything that happened in the sinking of the Titanic, it's just the fact that so many things went wrong. And one thing that went wrong that was because of this person's fault, that was because of that person's fault, which was because of that person's fault. And you really look back, kind of like a butterfly effect kind of thing. Like if you actually look back on certain spark events that triggered certain events, you just go, this was a crazy event. Like, this was just overall just an insane, like, miscommunication and cataclysmic fucking event that killed 1,500 people when it realistically shouldn't have. So yeah, and it's like, so I have a little I've got
some neat shit.
yeah, that's how you present a topic. You say, hey, this is how fucked up this shit is, really, honestly. And that's people's like innate fascination with this stupid ass topic. Because everyone's like, oh, the Titanic, haha, that's funny, that's like ironic. But it's like, no. When you fall down the rabbit hole, dude, you're dead. Because there's an entire fucking website dedicated to people arguing on forums about which fucking expansion joint failed first. You know what I mean? It's stupid. It's just dumb.
Really? Yeah,
It's
like to the nitty gritty engineering standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
And the honestly, the victim, it's the iceberg. But if you go further on this page, I mean, the reality of it, it's everything else that followed it.
Dude, people
because
actually...
the thing is, it's like, not to interrupt, but it's like, okay, so for instance, like my high school history teacher was Tim Allen, best teacher also.
Yeah.
Your fucking high school took him. But on top of that, though, it's like, okay, if you're talking about the topic of D-Day in World War II, what do people show? Oh, they show the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. In our generation, the only comparative is obviously the Titanic, the movie. And you think of like Rose and, oh, that bitch should have let him on the damn doorknob or whatever, and she let him sink to the bottom. But in reality, it's like, what caused the sinking was the iceberg, and when you go further into it, it's just so much more.
You know what's so funny about that is that, like, I looked in, everybody's seen the movie, but like certain aspects of the movie that I actually went back and rewatched, James Cameron was like a huge Titanic nut himself.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is that parts of the movie, which is a great point that you said, was that certain parts of the movie, they actually got historically correct because that was that, like, you know what I said, like, this went wrong because it was someone else's fault, there was a whatever, that like big cataclysmic event, all those things they put in the movie and they made visual to the audience. But the thing is that that's not what people think about. When they think about the movie, they are Rose and Jack and their love interest, whatever. They don't. But when you actually, the fucking hand on the window, whatever. But when you actually look back on the certain things that, like, I'm talking like 2-second, frames of the movie that they threw in there where you're like, holy shit, that actually historically happened. And not only happened, was important, And you don't actually, as a viewer, nobody really actually thinks of those things. And that's what I'm saying about getting you down the rabbit hole is the second you start thinking about those certain things, you're just done. You just keep compiling questions.
Because the questions arise from the whole idea of like, okay, well, why did that go wrong? Okay, well, it's because this went wrong. Okay, well, why did that go wrong?
Right.
And it's like, again, it's like everyone thinks, especially in our generation, it's just, and our generation doesn't particularly care much for the nitty-gritty details of history, so they think, oh, they hit an iceberg, and then the boat sank. But it's like, okay, but it's like, what happened after? I mean, it took, it happened at 11 o'clock at night, but it didn't go underwater until like 2:40 in the morning.
Right.
It's like, that's so much
That's what I heard on the way here. I had to brush myself up on some of this stuff, so I was laughing with Mike that I picked up a YouTube clip on the way over, and he's like, you went down the rabbit hole, and I just started laughing because boy did I go down the rabbit hole. So to kind of spark this, Mike, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
This is a story, as Will has alluded to, and you as well.
Yep.
This was a series of unfortunate events, as the book wrote
that is
about,
exactly
right? So in terms of this domino effect, let's start with the first domino. What was the first domino in the Titanic that created this cataclysmic reaction that split a ship in two? And
well, I'm glad you asked. so this one is kind of the really honestly, in my opinion, one of the spark first events, which probably all of your viewers who are just insane Titanic enthusiasts are probably cringing at my lack of knowledge. But
if they haven't already exited the video.
Yeah, right, yeah. The second that they saw the title was, Titanic related, they were out because they knew it would be inaccurate at some point. So, in my opinion, the spark really was, even before the Titanic even went from Belfast to New York, was like, it was in port. Like, people, they need to assemble crews. They need to do all this shit. So one of the craziest facts is there was an officer, and, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of, who he was, what his stature was in terms of officiality on the ship. It's mostly because I don't know, but I don't really care that much. So there was an officer who was supposed to be on the Titanic.
Is he a police officer or is he an officer
no.
of the ship?
Officer of the ship.
Okay.
So this officer was supposed to be on the Titanic, and he was relieved of his duties by the White Star Line. And so before Titanic even had its maiden voyage, they said that, listen, you're going to be relieved. We want Officer Murdoch and we want Officer Lightoller to effectively demote you to a place that we don't need you on this ship. So he was like, all right, well, fuck me, that kind of sucks. You know what I mean? But what did this guy have? This guy had, now there's a lot of conflicting evidence about this, but this was his own testimony, because obviously he survived. He wasn't on the Titanic at all. And the United States inquiry, they interviewed everybody. So
he's like Seth MacFarlane when he was supposed to be on a plane that drove right into a twin tower.
Right. Yeah, right. Amongst a
Which
lot of people.
Which is a funny comparison. A lot of people in our generation do compare 9/11 to the Titanic, but the only differentiation is
one was calculated,
one was created by our government,
yeah.
and one was an
right.
Oh.
Here we go.
topic for another
controversial topics. All right. So anyway, this guy was relieved of his duties, and he had a pair of keys, and this pair of keys was to unlock a certain cabinet for the crow's nest, and what it had in it was binoculars. Now, the conflicting evidence was, did the cabinet have binoculars? Were binoculars not even there? Whatever. But this guy was an integral role of him having the key or putting binoculars or whatever in the crow's nest.
This guy had one job, and it was to bring the binoculars.
Well, the thing is that
and
it
then
was
an iceberg showed up.
right,
and
well,
they told the
thing is
binocular
that-
guy to stay home.
Yeah, no, essentially. But the
bag.
fucked up part is that this guy was relieved of his duties and didn't think anything of it. Like, do you think about if your work just said, "Hey, we don't need you to," do you think about what the fuck's in your pocket?
But let's be honest, I think some of it's sometimes spiteful. Somebody's supposed to be like, this is the biggest ship to make history in our... This is going to be literally talked about forever.
Sure,
and he's probably
ship.
like, damn you guys for not letting me on the ship.
Regardless. So they start in, so now what that falls into is that the crow's nest is the lookout, they're the eyes, you know what I mean? So we get to the fateful night, that time, and so there was a lookout. He was 24 years old, which is crazy because he was our age essentially. And he actually survived, but he testified that he was saying that I didn't have, we knew that there was this container that was locked or whatever, and we didn't have access to. He's like, I didn't have binoculars. So that night, when they were literally searching the coastline, even though it was a clear night, they were searching the coastline with their bare naked eye. And he was saying that his testification,
It was foggy and everything too. Like there was hard to see.
His testimony was that if he would have had binoculars, that he could have seen it soon enough. And it was so funny because the United States, when the inquiry into that, they're like, how soon enough would you have seen it? And he's like, his literal words, he was like, soon enough for us to miss it. And that's actually what he now I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but yeah, he was like soon enough that we could have missed it, you know? And so this thing is like, that is
Okay,
fucking, that's the tip of the iceberg, pun intended.
Yes, pun intended. Here's my question for you, though. Let's just say, in terms of a checklist, right? And we're going to get to everything that was missing and what was there and what wasn't there. But in terms of, getting on a boat, right? And I get, do we have a life vest? Check. Okay, cool. Even if it's just your personal boat, whatever it is, I got to imagine the next rung beneath having a steering wheel is binoculars. I mean,
well, no,
what's the
you
point
make
of
a great
crow's
point.
nest
You
without seeing?
You make a really good point, Alex. And the reason why is because a lot of the crew in when the White Star Line got all this shit together and got this crew and whatever, a lot of them, more than the culmination of all of them, were actually severely inexperienced.
Oh yeah.
And so
was it because it was okay? Can you liberate me from my ignorance in terms of literally the Titanic in its relation to its time? my understanding, very ignorant, naive understanding of
Sure.
the Titanic was that it was so groundbreaking that the next biggest ship was nowhere near the size of the Titanic. How groundbreaking was this ship? How new was it to the public?
It was extremely, and so there was so much innovation in engineering. Me being
Yes,
in
and can you
engineering.
elaborate
And
on
so,
that?
Yeah, the engineering nut that I am, like, it's the actual innovation and everything that was put on the ship. It was ahead of its time, bar none. Like, the only thing that stood underneath it was the Olympic, was its sister ship, and even so, then Titanic had upgrades that put Olympic.
So how close was the
underneath
Olympic
it.
to that? Like, as somebody who's totally ignorant to the Olympic.
97%.
Yeah, I mean,
It
Like
was-
in size and
in
capacity?
size, yeah, everything. It
No,
was like
wait. I don't mean to cut you off. But was the Titanic? It had a sister ship. I thought there was a third. I could have been wrong.
Britannic.
Britannic.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
okay.
the Britannic, if I remember correctly, I think the Britannic was a little smaller.
It was smaller. Yeah.
But
I actually think the sister ship was a bit bigger.
but so
than
so let me toss
Really?
this.
But
So wait,
not,
wait,
but not like in terms of like.
So the
grandiose.
Olympic was larger than the Titanic?
in terms of like
No.
maybe foot like that, maybe.
No, they were
but
the
I could
same.
be
They were
wrong.
the same size.
Okay, so they
Yeah.
were the same.
They're
size.
the same size.
For all intents and purposes, the drawings, the engineering drawings, and everything that the Olympic and Titanic were built on, they are identical. The only changes that were made were changes after the fact. And so Titanic, because of its maiden voyage and because it was the world spectacular and people were watching it, they made certain upgrades to make it more classy, to do certain changes.
And
to
it
do
being
certain
its
things.
maiden voyage, not to cut Mike off, but it just being its maiden voyage, it's like it's this single. It's its first takeoff. It's
But has
literally
the
going there on
Olympic
its
taken a
first.
sail yet?
No, it was the Titanic.
Olympic's gone.
The Titanic.
But the
At
Olympic...
the time, yes.
The Olympic had sailed
The
before.
Olympic, and
Oh,
I was
really?
telling him
I didn't
about
know
it.
that.
Yeah, the Olympic was finished. In
But
the
had it been
in the
used?
dock in Belfast. Yeah, the
Oh, wow. I
Olympic.
didn't know that.
So the
I didn't know
Olympic
that.
went out and it was sailing through like the English Channel. And I was telling you, it had like issues. There was a ship that actually collided with it, and it was going through damage report and everything and all that stupid shit. But Titanic was
the first
behind.
transatlantic was that the was the Titanic the first like
I don't
transatlantic?
think no. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think Olympic did transatlantic.
And can
yeah.
you go over real quick one more time where the Titanic left and was headed to? New York.
Belfast to New
Belfast.
York.
Yeah. with
Wait,
the Ellis
Belfast to New York.
England to New York.
Yes.
Yes.
And so where did they go through? Did they hit an iceberg?
It was like
Nova
Scotia
Yeah.
area. It's called Iceberg Alley.
Because of the trajectory, think of it like kind of like planes. They kind of like
this.
yeah.
there's
think
a
of it like
curve
planes.
to
They
it,
kind of
right.
like it's like a curvature like.
The curvature of the Earth, which the Earth is round. To all Alex's viewers, I'm sorry.
You flat
But
earthers?
There's
Back
a
out.
there's a
we
slight
still believe the
curve.
globe is circle.
There's a curve to the path, but yeah, it's Belfast to New York. But
We've
when
actually
they're
had
going-
arguments with friends of ours about why
They made it
go
2/3 of the way.
Yeah.
And so Nova Scotia is like Canada, and so
Gotcha.
that's like the northern. And
Yes,
like,
he says, okay, great, perfect, that's right.
So anyways, Olympic had done a bunch of trials and all that shit, and Olympic was done and set and sailing. Titanic was still being worked on because this is a company, you know what I mean, and they were behind schedule.
And think of it, and think of Starline in terms of like think of like your Carnival cruises and stuff like that. But Starline was like the creme de la creme. I mean,
yeah,
Starline
they were
was
the
like
number one.
like you have your Carnival cruises. Oh, let's go have fun. But like you want your nice stream ocean liners. That's Starline.
Dude,
so
and
that's
they-
what the Titanic was.
And from an engineering standpoint, they really were ungodly ahead of their time. Like
Oh,
they
yeah.
thought of everything.
It was like German engineering in World War II, like kind of just ahead of its time, just like in terms of like a step above the rest. And
Anyways, like I was saying, the Olympic set sail before the Titanic. The Titanic, like Will was saying, the White Star Line is like cream of the crop, like whatever. Like the world is watching this fucking like ocean lining company because the White Star Line had been around since like the late mid to late 1800s. Like they just
and did this
produced-
end that company, or did they keep...
Kind of,
continue?
yeah. No, it
kind of.
did.
Oh,
It
yeah,
totally
this was
did.
Unbelievable.
But the thing
loss.
is that it didn't. The funny, fucked up part about it is it didn't end because they had there's another ship that actually sank in the like in the 1890s. That was a White Star Line, whatever. It's not the fact that the Titanic sunk that put the White Star Line under the ground.
It was
It was financially. There's so much insurance policy shit. Like there's so much on the logistical side of things that just ruined it. But so Titanic is, you know, it's being worked on and it's behind whatever. It's going to have its maiden voyage. But the thing is they already had problems with Olympic. So Olympic like was going sailing, doing whatever, and it was actually struck by a British warship, and that caused a lot of damage to the hull. They had to bring it back to the port and fix it and do whatnot. So when they had Titanic and they fixed these upgrades, this was a big fucking deal. And we all know today how the media does things. It's not, I take that back, it's not today, it's just in general how the media does things. The media was like, this is a big deal, this is a big ship. And so if you're a company and people are blowing up your product, why wouldn't you be like, it's unsinkable?
It's the
like
unsinkable
we have literally we have 100 engineers.
Wait, what was going on with the Olympic that caused them to say that?
Well, just the fact, it's not just that. It was the like Olympic went through, did its thing, did its trials, and it was good. It was a functional ship, but it went through some shitty things with it being struck, it being fixed, whatever. But White Star Line refused to lose its ego. And so they're like, well, we got another one. This one is already set to make a transatlantic voyage. And not only is it going to make a transatlantic voyage, it's going to make the fastest transatlantic voyage of any ship that's ever been made. So it's already like built up. And so the media is like, well, hey, there's the Titanic. So then they're like, not only is it the Titanic, but we are so smart and we have so many engineers and we've thought of everything. It is literally unsinkable. This ship is indestructible. You know what I mean? And they just started talking up for media press. You know what I mean? Right. Why not? Like I was telling Will, like and this boggled my mind. Was in 1912. It was a $7.5 million ship. Like I didn't do the calculation of what that cost today, but that's got to be in the hundreds.
Wait, what year was this again?
1912. April 12th, 1912 was when it sank.
Well, it was being built like 1911, 1910.
It started like, it took like 2 years to be produced.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So,
of course.
Yeah, just go back.
It's Murphy's Law.
Yeah. Anyways, but like, so it was, we can all agree that that's really fucking expensive, right?
Oh, for inflation, couldn't even put it into money.
Right. So the as I was saying before, the big thing that everybody knows is they're like, oh, it struck an iceberg, fucking doesn't have enough lifeboats, everything like that.
And then Rose didn't let Jack on the door.
Yeah, Rose and Jack, they were people.
Bad situation
like
all
it's
around.
100%. Leonardo DiCaprio didn't survive, and then he washed up on the shore of
what a day.
Inception.
Shutter. Yeah, that was a good
Inception.
movie. That was a good movie too.
Yeah. So
wait, what are we talking about? Oh yeah, Titanic.
Inception. We're talking about Leonardo DiCaprio's acting career. But so the next point that I made here was that they had that is a very controversial. I take that back. It's not controversial, but the lifeboats. Everybody wants to make it a big controversy that they think of. Hey, Titanic didn't have enough lifeboats. Why didn't it have enough lifeboats? You know, what the hell was going on? Well, the cool part about that is that Titanic actually didn't do anything wrong. They were well within maritime law. That maritime law at the time said that you only need enough lifeboats to ferry people to and from a rescue ship from your disaster zone. Yeah. So there was a minimum required amount of lifeboats. And so Titanic met that minimum requirement. And there was they were faced with which I said this from the beginning, it's all of a decision or something that just fucked up, that just escalated. This was another engineering decision. I'm in engineering, so I understand the idea of cutbacks. Where like it doesn't matter. Like if you have a building and it's a $450,000 building, if we do something that can save them $10,000, they're gonna do it. Especially the people who are involved. It doesn't matter.
No
people
one likes paying expenses.
Yeah, no, and the fun fact behind the lifeboats is that it's a $7.5 million ship. They had, I believe, like 68 lifeboats, and they needed only 32 more to be able to save every single person on the ship. Not only did they have room on the ship to do so, it would have only cost them $16,000 to purchase those last 32 lifeboats. So they decided not to, because that's $16,000 that they saved.
And you got to think too. It's like Mike's saying. So you're thinking maritime laws in 1912.
Ah! Holy shit! I said 100. Did I not say like 100 million something? $200 million is what the ship would have cost.
Is what $7.5 million in 1912 is $200 million today.
Wow.
That is incredible.
And going off what Mike's saying too about like the maritime laws of like what 1912 is like they were up to provisions, like they weren't like in the wrong. For especially like if you were going to say
They
like,
met all
oh
codes.
for like an insurance claim,
nothing was illegal.
But the thing is, it's like if you're saying in today's terms, it's like like me having like a private like just like a little speedboat. It's like you need enough life jackets for every person on board.
Right.
You can't do that anymore. That all arose because of the Titanic disaster.
Wow.
There was and
there is so much more than just life jackets.
A lot
But
of
again,
those,
wasn't further just to further your point about the lifeboats, wasn't it that there were less, they decreased the amount of boats because the aesthetic of
that is exactly
Yeah.
correct. That's exactly, and that's what I was going to say is
Okay.
that it would have only cost them $16,000, and they had more than enough room on the ship to accommodate those 32 extra lifeboats. They decided against it because A, they're not violating code, and B, it would have ruined the aesthetic of people being able to see out of the ship, to see the horizon and all that aesthetic shit.
Wow.
And
I
it was
love
just
seeing waves and dolphins. And
but
shit.
you know
I
what?
don't care about my.
But you know what's so funny about that is coming from
sub-freezing water. Who
No,
gives
but
a shit?
coming from an engineering standpoint,
Says the
that
girl
is
on the door.
so that is so unbelievably realistic. I would not blame a single person for that decision because working with architects in the actual field, they literally don't give two shits about the logistical side of engineering. They want it to look nice.
Plus, you have faith in policy.
Right,
You
and
believe the politicians are looking out for you, and
well,
they make
not only
maritime
that,
laws.
I wouldn't even say the politicians. I would say the again. Let's say I'm an architect, which I've been in this situation before with architects. They want to make fucking like triangles and shit. They make it because they want to see it, and then they pass it down to structural, electrical, and mechanical, and they say make this work. You know what I mean? Now, I guarantee you, in the grand scheme of the engineering hierarchy that was Titanic, somebody said, hey guys, we should probably have enough lifeboats. And so then the architect came by, or somebody, in like design or whatever. They're
guy
like,
in charge of the
they're like,
triangles.
hey, they pulled up the binder and they're like, right here, maritime code, buddy. We don't need them. And guess what? It would save us $16,000. We're going to make that promenade fucking look great. And so that's exactly what probably happened, minus some, words or whatever. So it was probably a little more formal, and they're wearing suits and whatnot.
I don't know about that, Mr. Smith. I would love to see the waves.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're like, oh,
You
please,
said the
pardon
dude in
me.
charge of the triangles and shit's like, I don't know about
Yeah,
that.
no.
shit.
At least the ship didn't have any triangles, so that's a current modern day thing. So anyway, so the lifeboats was like a huge contention of like people could have survived, but it was a total like decision not to do it. So we're already hitting like. These are preconceptual notions that are like already spelling its fucking downfall.
This
you
is
know
before
what I mean?
Jack.
We
wanted
haven't
to
even
get on the
left. We
boat.
haven't even left Belfast yet. And actually, you know what? Was it Halifax or Belfast?
No, it was Belfast. I'm more than positive it was Belfast. But again,
All right.
I don't know
To
shit.
all you Titanic enthusiasts out there, hit us up in the comments. Because, yeah.
Yeah, before you hit the dislike button, correct.
It was Belfast or Halifax. I don't know. It doesn't matter. They left Britain or England or fucking.
we haven't even hit Hartford yet.
It's not America. So that's all that matters.
They left
So,
the queen of Pedophile Island, and they headed over here.
Yeah. Jesus, dude. Why? Needs to go there. Oh, hey, actually, I'm really glad I looked up. We're all completely wrong. It was Southampton. That's what it was, Southampton.
We're all idiots. This entire podcast doesn't make
Dude,
sense.
there's
Hey, yo,
people
so at
that
least
have
we
been
got the
screaming.
ocean-
In
at least-
Belfast, dislike.
Yeah,
We
no,
have a
at least-
dude in the
hey.
chat. F.
Hey,
Just
at
so
least we
you
got
get
the
it.
fact that it's a ship right. So that's all
Oh, I'm
I'm
glad
worried.
they didn't think it was the
It was a
Hindenburg.
plane. It was a plane. So this ship flew into the iceberg at 2,000 knots or whatever.
Wait.
airplane.
Is this the Titanic or Pearl Harbor? I can't keep my facts straight anymore.
It doesn't matter. So, it's all the same. Belfast. Yeah, that's exactly. So anyway, so we've already hit like just two logistical points, but there's obviously many more. But
And then many clerical errors.
yeah, no, there was definitely a lot of probably somebody in the design office going, that's probably not a good idea. And someone going, don't worry about it. And so, that was probably a lot of that
And then
shit
they got
happened.
their newspaper one day and was like,
They're like, well,
Told them.
fuck me. That's
Oh
a
my
lot of
God.
people died. So
Before we get into the newspaper art of it, which will be later on in the conversation, I do want to circle back around to the media attention after the sinking. Very interesting, especially considering what today's climate is with the media. It
the
is
end before the
fascinating, but I don't want to jump ahead. Let's continue with the
all right, so
leaving.
so
Halifax, Belfast, Ireland.
Southampton.
Okay, cool.
Idiot.
Ireland. We left Ireland.
So they were finally leaving, right? People are fucking waving their napkins or whatever at people or whatever. They don't know that they're gonna fucking
I finished
perish.
my steak dinner, bitch.
Yeah,
Have
right.
a fun
So
time.
they're-
It's got stains.
They're
on it.
all
I love you.
They all love it. They're like, dude, I'm on a fucking, this ship is fucking, it's whatever.
Jack
So-
and his Irish or Italian friend are running down the street trying
They're
to get on.
they're in the bottom of the ship shoveling coal or something. Like, they're the peons of everybody on the Titanic. Everybody above is like, they're allowed to be there.
We're going to go out on a limb and say a lot of those people died.
Yeah, no, that's again, spoiler alert, but like, no one knows the
spoiler,
the
it's a
tragedies
bad
of the Titanic. A lot of people died. So,
Wait, it sank?
yeah, actually, believe it or not. Yeah, did you not see the movie?
Must have missed it.
So they sail off and they're like, whatever, dude. The captain's like, fucking full steam ahead. Send this shit to Pluto. I want to fucking go as quick as possible. Like, I want this to be a jet boat, which those aren't even invented yet, but we're gonna do it. So they just start
Jet boat?
a jet boat, and they just start going ham, and they're just speeding towards New York. Everything's great. Everyone's loving it. I don't know how many days it was. It was like a month or something, and like everyone's cool with it. And all of a sudden, this is where this comes in. So this is the best part. This is, you don't even know this, which we were talking about this. This is fucking maniacal. So this was like huge problem number like 8 or 3 or 9 at this point. So there's a ship out there, which is a British built ship, and it's called the SS Californian, which I find really ironic because it's a British ship that was built and they named it in heritage of California, which is like, we kicked your guys' ass like 100 some years ago, and you're gonna name something, you know,
After us, yeah.
after
a
us.
new
Yeah,
state?
yeah. I thought that was kind of weird.
Dude, get over your ex and just put it in someone
Yeah,
else.
yeah, really.
Ask this shit.
I thought that was kind of odd. I literally had to double check myself. I'm like, was the SS Californian really a British ship? It was British built, and they literally named it in honor of California. Super don't get that. But anyways, so like, what in America is like, yo, Britain's great. Like, we named it that. Like, nothing.
Yeah, we literally have a date celebrating kicking your ass, but sure, we love the California.
Yeah, right. So, anyways, the SS Californian is out there, and it's actually going towards New York as well. Okay. And so the SS Californian is out there, and it's like, hey, this is the captain and what the whole crew and everything, they're like, hey, like, this is pretty messed up. There's we're getting into Iceberg Alley. Like, this, it's nighttime. Like, this is kind of fucked up. Like, we probably will hit an iceberg if we.
The dude with the keys to the binoculars took a nap. Like, I don't know what the hell.
No. See, on the Californian, they had a dude with binoculars, and he's like, bro, this shit is fucked up. And so they're like, he reported back to the bridge, and he's like, hey,
Wait. So wait, I'm confused. The
you for
Californian came in, and this is another ship from England?
The Californian was already going. Yes.
And they're ahead of the Titanic.
Now, so remember I was telling you about maritime code and like all that bullshit? Like, there's a lot of, like, it wasn't like before the Titanic people didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Like, there was a lot of really smart things in place. One of the things that was important about ships sailing transatlantic, or even maybe trans-Pacific, was that there were certain ships within certain distances at all times.
Wow,
to
okay.
save people.
Okay,
And
that
so
was a big piece
that's
of
a
this
legitimate
puzzle.
thing. Now, granted, I don't know if the SS California was going out at the same time as Titanic because of that, like, law, but they were. So anyway,
So are they neck and neck, or is the SS California
I don't know.
ahead of
Not
them?
I
neck
don't-
and neck, but it might be like,
Yeah.
hey, we're far enough ahead to where we could turn around.
They were pretty damn fucking close. Like,
Or, yeah, it could be
extremely
super
close.
close, like-
So this is like, in my opinion, out of everything, which we'll get into like the fucked up parts of like when things really went wrong. In my opinion, this passage, which like just bear with me, I'm gonna read, but when I read through it, you're gonna be like, holy fuck, like holy fuck, like this passage is ridiculous. Okay,
I mean,
so
everything starts turning into
dude,
holy fuck
this
real
is
goddamn quick.
dude, like super fast. So the Titanic and Californian are, just to preface this excerpt. So the Titanic and the California are going essentially towards the same goal. They hit Iceberg Alley, and the captain of the Californian says, "Fuck that, we're not doing that." And so he orders his ship to stop, and he's like, "We're gonna stop for the night. We're gonna wait till daytime so we can actually identify icebergs." So the Californian, what it does is it has, because everyone's in contact by radio, right? Mm-hmm. And so they radio nearby ships, including the Titanic. And the guy on the radio says, yo, he says this verbatim. He says, yo, motherfucking icebergs dead ahead. Probably not a good idea. You should probably watch yourself. Titanic was like, we're getting a lot of messages, like a shit ton, and your message is like not labeled as important, so I'm gonna ignore it. But that's cool for you, so thanks. And so that's the idea, all right? That's the idea.
That's awesome.
That's
Not
the
verbatim,
image.
but that's the
That's
idea.
no verbatim. So that's the image that we're painting here, okay?
Yeah,
So I'm gonna read this.
1912. That's cool, bro. Keep it to yourself.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna
this
go
is
this way.
all right, so this is the image, and I might stop to continue, so because there's a lot of spoilers in here. But anyway, so they said the Californian encountered a large ice field at 2:20 ship's time, which is like you were saying, like 11 o'clock, somewhere around there. So Captain Lord, captain of the Californian, he decided to stop his ship and wait until morning before proceeding further. Before leaving the bridge, he thought he saw a ship. He thought he saw ship's light away to the east, like eastward side of the ship, but he wasn't sure if that was just a ship or a rising star. So he continued to the engineers' cabins that met with the chief, whom, and you already know where this is going, and he goes, he says, hey, we're gonna stop, like, no big deal. So they go with, he's like, are there, Captain Lord talks to his, this guy Evans, they just use his last name, so Evans was the radio operator. Captain Lord says to Evans, hey, do you know any other ships that are out there? And Evans responded, he says, only the Titanic. Only the Titanic is the one that's out there that we know of. And so he goes, hey, could you do me a solid and inform them that this shit is fucked up, bumpy road ahead, you should probably watch yourself. So he goes, all right, cool. So, I'm sorry, I lied. Evans was he was just some dude, but the wireless operator, Jack Phillips, that's the guy. So Jack, ironic, yeah, Jack Phillips was busy clearing a backlog of passengers' messages with the wireless station with Cape Newfoundland, whatever. And so Evans' message that the U.S. Californian was stopped and surrounded by ice due to the relative proximity of the two ships drowned out a separate message that Phillips had sent in the process of receiving from Cape Race is a place in Canada, so they're receiving messages back and forth between Cape Race in Canada, talking to them like, hey, we're going to be there a certain time, like whatever. And so this guy just rebuked, like, okay, our messages, yeah, I'm not worried about it. He was telling Phillips like yeah, we're in contact with Titanic, but that's not important, so we don't really care. So Phillips never passed the message to the bridge of like being in contact with the Titanic, which, like, in terms of like being on a ship and being a wireless operator, when they say
That's your one job.
passing a message to the bridge is like giving something to the authorities.
Right.
Like, you could keep everything to yourself if you're a wireless operator. So passing it on to the authorities to be is literally one of the fucking most like important things like ever. So basically the here, so right around here, so the message that, hey, icebergs are plentiful straight ahead, like that message never got relayed to the authorities, because once the authorities get they're like, hey, stop all messages, there is like, this is pertinent, send this message out, because they're getting a lot of messages of like, from land and from other ships of like, hey, how you doing? That's cool. Like, hey, when are you guys going to get here? Like, there's a lot of stuff intercommunicating back and forth. They can isolate, and now I don't know how telecommunications really worked back then, but you can really isolate certain messages of like, this is important, this is not important, whatever. They never really isolated it, so the message of like, hey, shit's really fucked up ahead never got relayed to that certain person. So they just, honestly, the Californian, they're like, all right, no big deal, whatever, we're doing our thing, we stopped, no big deal. So now that's everything on the California. So we go back to the Titanic. They're sailing.
Don't forget about that ship.
Yeah, no, this is all about the Titanic. So they are actually in actual literal terms, full steam ahead. So they're going at it. And
Yeah, in
the
2020
captain,
terms, you would put it as a full send. That's the Titanic.
right? Yeah, the captain. Yeah, Captain. What was his name
Which one?
of the Titanic?
Oh shit! I can think. Speaking of the captain,
You don't know.
if you do watch the movie, I can't think of the name, but if you do watch
Skipper?
the movie,
No.
the architect, the people that actually got based off of real people in the movie The Titanic look very splitting. to how
Edward
they are.
Smith.
Yeah. Smith in the movie
That's who it
looks
was.
just like how he does in real life.
Oh, yeah.
It's very
It's
very
really
well
eerie.
casting. There's
Where
so
were
much. Holy shit.
Yeah. So what we were saying, where we were, was that the Californian they were like, we're straying away from icebergs, and the Titanic was like, nah, fuck that, we're going full steam ahead, no big deal. But there was also amongst the billion points, which I'll probably say multiple times, amongst a billion points of what went wrong, that was the mindset of the crew. Because even though I said that a lot of the crew was inexperienced, a lot of them were experienced, but it didn't matter because this is their job. Their job was to perform, and this ship was to perform. So they said, I want to make it to New York as fast as possible. Like, we're going to throw safety. Well, I don't want to say safety because safety wasn't thrown aside, but I'm going to throw caution to the wind completely. And we're going to, whether those, and a lot of this, whether those messages were actually received or not, whatever, even though there's pretty substantial evidence that they weren't, but whether those messages were actually relayed or not, they were like, they had their ego. Like, we're going. Edward Smith was like, I'm captain, let's fucking go. Let's, 3,000 miles per hour.
I mean, you got to think, it being considered the unsinkable ship, it being the
no
most
worries.
grand
Zero
vessel
worries, yeah.
of the world. I mean,
Right.
when you think of the best planes in the world, and I'm not talking about like G6s or whatever, which is apparently comes to mind whenever everyone thinks of planes. But in terms of famous planes, you think Air Force One. That's the president's plane. I mean, this was up there in terms of like, what is a grand vessel? It's the Titanic.
Right.
It is an unsinkable ship. This should be the creme
It's
de la crop.
indestructible.
It is the perfect ship ever made.
The one thing that Will made me recognize, your comment sparked in me, is the creators of the Titanic and even the country itself, we branded this as the unsinkable ship,
Right.
the greatest ship,
Right.
and it sank. You know
On
what's
its
funny?
first voyage.
On its first voyage. You know what's funny is I don't think we have any, and it may be the monopoly, capitalist of our country, the capitalist style of our country, but we've never had a vehicle that brands itself as the best.
Probably because of the
ever
fucking
since.
Titanic.
Oh no, honestly, yeah. Mike
I
is
would
correct.
imagine that's what I would.
I
That's what I was kind of going to allude
Right.
to. Is like this was the best, the baddest, and the greatest. And its first voyage, it sank. There is no car, no plane, no drone.
It wasn't a spiritual Deus Ex level thing. It was just sheer embarrassment.
It was on the terms of embarrassment of this was the creme de la crop thing. This should not happen. This is the greatest
that like 4
vessel,
times.
the greatest engineering. Wow, that's what you do. The greatest engineering achievement Marvel ever created, and on its maiden voyage, it not only
fucking
had a
sank.
problem, it sank, and it killed.
It didn't just sink; it split in two.
Well, you know what the
Okay, it's
greatest.
splitting in two. I get that.
We'll get there.
It's
I
splitting
can't wait.
in-
That's the only. I've been sitting on my edge of my seat,
Yeah.
waiting for the split in two.
Yeah, we just left
Yeah.
Belfast. I was like, what the fuck was that?
Not Belfast, damn it! What is this?
Southampton. It's Southampton.
But
Southampton.
it's splitting in two, honestly, when you watch the YouTube video or whatever, just the movie, makes sense of why it did split in two. But it's just more, it's the fact of like, okay, this shouldn't happen. This is a marvel. It was up there with like, this is the wonders of the world, the pyramids, and on top of that, the Titanic was considered to be one of them.
Well, you got to remember too.
It is 12,000 feet in the ocean now, and it's been there since 1912.
You got to, dude, and you got to remember too, like the idea.
This was supposed to be with the pyramids. Alien like built like this shit. 12,000 feet in the ocean.
Well, actually, you know what? I'm
1,500
gonna contrary your point a little bit.
might as well leave.
Is that no, actually, because I'm the enthusiast and I've read many forums about people
I'm
arguing.
on the Facebook
It's
forum.
13,000 feet.
No, but
you
actually,
loser.
no, but the funny part. No, but here's the
And
funny
this
part.
buckle broke first, and you're wrong.
Here's the duality of that situation: is that look at the Olympic and the Titanic. They were so extremely similar. Like nobody knows dick about the Olympic,
Oh,
and
okay,
they
yeah,
don't.
that's a
But
great
they were
point,
so
yeah.
extremely similar that the Olympics survived, went on a bunch of shit, did a lot of shit, did a shit ton of shit, and then it was scrapped like every other ship. It was a marvel of its time.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
The only reason why Titanic, and this is the whole point. This is why this all started. And this is my fascination with this subject. Is the only reason why people. This is before the movie. Like when I talk about Titanic enthusiasts and everything like that, James Cameron was fucking shitting green when there was still fucking clubs of people that would get together and talk about the fucking Titanic. Is because when the United States inquiry into the sinking of the Titanic happened right after it happened, like 1912, like it was still,
Right. Yeah,
it was very recent.
I remember hearing about
And so then the United States inquiry, they had it testified so many people, and even all these people that testified, and they're like trying to compile the story of what the fuck happened. Like I guarantee you, a lot of people on that committee and on that fucking like judicial plane, all of them had to be like, this is a pretty fucked up situation. Like a lot of shit
And
went
speaking
wrong.
of the judicial
Like,
thing, like the whole concept of like going into like the inquiry of what happened to the Titanic, speaking on the media aspect, you think of the media now, like something goes wrong.
The media blew it up so hard after it
Within
sank.
minutes, I mean, people are putting out articles.
Yeah.
So think of 1912. There's no this. There is no World Wide Web. There's not even like the idea of like a phone is still a turntable
Right.
telephone.
Right.
People were offering their yearly salary to survivors of the Titanic to get stories about what the hell
it was
happened.
Huge.
That is how much effort was put in to be the first one put up. The New York Times. So the New York Times was around back then.
Yeah.
The New York Times was around back
So was
then.
the Washington Post.
And the Washington Post,
Yeah.
correct? People were offering not only their yearly salary, but their life savings to be the first one to put out the story of the Titanic.
It was
because they
that
knew it would be
big.
the story of the century at that point.
It was that big. Like imagine,
This is like April
But
15th.
again,
like,
that's
Will-
back to Will's point. That's why I want to get to the media aspect of this. Following, there's so many layers to this.
Shit, there's
and
so many aspects.
that is the most intriguing because Will just nonchalantly goes, "There was none of this," and he
You want to know a
raises his
man who was
phone.
supposed to be
But
on the
like,
Titanic that wasn't? The owners of Hershey. Hershey's chocolate was supposed to be on the Titanic. Now,
you
Mike
say
and I
the
have
only.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people.
No, but that's the thing. Mike and I have talked about this before. How many famous businessmen, corporations that now control this country were on the Titanic that died?
Well, you're
Died.
Yeah,
with
how
it. We're
many?
getting way ahead.
No, how
Yeah,
many?
but we don't know. We don't know.
Were there none?
well, I'll get there, but
Were there none?
Spoiler alert.
But once we
No,
get
get
there,
to the spoiler.
There were a lot.
but again, it
There
goes
are a
back
lot.
to it goes
Dude,
back
when
to
you
the
when you
Mike-
make fun of the audience leaning towards a flat Earth,
Yeah.
you got to understand that my first inclination is that Mr. Hershey didn't get. I lived 20 minutes from Hershey for
Yeah.
the past 3 years.
There
That
were-
dude was a mogul, not just a minor dude.
Based on what you're saying, I'm saying the opposite. There were so many extremely important people that were on
That's
that
what I needed to hear.
And they were
That's
on it
that-
because
when he
it was
says
that
Hershey,
guy.
I start going, when I look at Seth MacFarlane and Mark Wahlberg were
The
supposed to
vice
be on a plane
president-
into the Twin Towers,
the vice-
I go, that's pretty convenient. So when he goes, the guy who owns a city and everybody's fucking chocolate, I go, that's pretty convenient.
The vice president of Macy's was on that and died.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the thing is, want to know is actually a funny story about him that died. He actually died a hero. So again,
Oh, come on. I have that quoted. Wait, go ahead, say it, but I want
Say
to
it.
say the quote.
I don't know
I want to say the
particular
quote.
quote, but, like,
Yeah,
no,
say it
you
this
won't.
time.
You won't fuck it up enough. Go
but
ahead.
going ahead of the time, it was like he.
This happened at 1:46 in the morning.
And it
So,
sunk
okay.
at 2
11 a.m.
30.
A little bit.
For those watching, there is a
2:20.
YouTube video. It's called "The Real Time Sinking the Titanic."
Watch
It's
it.
2 hours and 42
Absolutely
minutes. It
watch
starts
it.
at 11
Link in the
a.m.
bio. It's
Yeah.
in the description here.
If you ever want to watch it and have a conversation with your friends, have it during this video is on because it is fun to have conversations during
Absolutely.
it. Mike and I got super into
Too
this.
much.
More, yeah, way too much. Way too much more.
But the VP of
the
Macy's.
VP is Macy's. He said so.
He was not the VP of Macy's.
I thought it was the actual president. I thought it was like the actual.
Well,
owner
no.
of Macy's.
No. VP of Macy's was on the Titanic. The guy you're talking about was not the VP of Macy's. He was one of the bigwigs. Yes,
Okay,
it was
yeah.
Guggenheim. It was.
Oh yeah, he's right. He's right.
Wait. This is the guy that owns the Guggenheim?
Yeah.
The museum?
Yeah.
Guggenheim.
Yeah. Alexander. Like think of it.
The Guggenheim Museum?
Alexander, you got to think the amount of
Benjamin
people that
Guggenheim.
the amount of the people that were trying to come over here, the most wealthiest of individuals in Europe were coming to the United States on the idea of the American dream, and they
Wait, that's what. Hold on. Pause. Titanic. My understanding of the Titanic has always been, and this must be the modern day American ignorant perspective, I always perceived those on the Titanic were those taking a cruise.
Yes.
No,
Going
yes,
on vacation.
Yes.
You're not wrong, but there were
A very
there were-
top tier of them, yes, but most of them, no.
Most of them
Most
were
of them.
what? Just trying to come to the American dream?
Yeah, oh yeah. They
Right.
were trying to. Hey, I'm an immigrant. The first sight I see of America
Wow,
is the
dude.
Statue of Liberty, and it is a glorious sight. And like, I could live my own life. It's a free world. But the other percent of it were
Okay, so back to my second question.
Okay.
I always understood the Titanic was the biggest, the baddest, and the
biggest, baddest bitch. This
Right.
The
side of
extremely
Europe.
rich
and the
and
creme
wealthy
de la
took
creme
it
people
as
were
a
the
cruise.
only ones with the ticket.
Imagine where
Again,
the United States economy would be if those people
Well,
lived. And
well, look at
survived.
the Cyberlings, the ones that own Goodyear. F.A. Cyberling, he was supposed to be on the Titanic, and something came up business-wise, and he couldn't be on it.
Shit.
Can we-
Fun fact: my great grandfather was supposed to be on the Titanic and missed it.
Which is why we're having this episode.
Overslept. That was where my curiosity stemmed from. Yeah, my family's lineage in this country only extends about a little bit over 100 years. My grandfathers on my mom's side were, my grandparents on my mom's side were Irish. I mean, my mom's 100% Irish, and on my
couldn't
dad's
tell.
side, yeah, I know. And on my dad's side, it's German and English. But the English, my Evelyn Hubert, her grandfather came over on this country on the boat a week after the Titanic. He was supposed to be on the Titanic. If I'm not,
that is wild.
If I'm not
So,
miscorrected,
just
it was
one
my
last
grand-
thing I want to emphasize in my question is, okay, so the rich obviously got a ticket, and the ticket was just for the cruise. They were
Right.
rich and powerful.
Yep,
But then there's this story where Jack gambles and he swindles out of some rich guys a ticket onto the creme de la creme.
Yeah, I won an Academy Award or
So, how
something.
many people were Jacks on that ship? How
Oh,
many?
so many.
How many
Yeah, a lot of
Jacks
people.
got
There's
tickets?
literally-
How'd they get tickets?
Well, there's a lot.
Alexander, you don't understand. Like, so
I don't know
many were
that.
those people.
I don't know that, but the thing is there's so.
Well, I'm just curious. Was
you
a
have-
lot?
you
Was
have-
a few?
Well, if you want to go the hierarchy of
Social status.
yeah,
wealth
right.
class.
You have A deck, B
Yeah.
deck, C deck, D deck, E deck. Okay, and so in
Oh, they're assuming. Yeah,
in
it was
E-Deck-
a technical marvel. I mean, that's how big this
dude.
ship
In
was.
E deck, there's Scotland Road is what they called it. It
Yeah.
was one of the
Tons of Scottish.
Yeah,
And
it,
then right
it
above
was
were
like
the Irish.
it was just a hall. It's just like every single deck had a hallway, and all the rooms flanked each side of the hallway. On E deck, you had Scotland Road because that's where all the Scottish immigrants were. You know what I mean? That's what they
For
called.
real?
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Actually,
So
I
they
was-
even segregated it by culture.
100%.
Yeah, that's just but the thing, it wasn't segregated. That's
That's
how
how
it
it was.
turned out. Yeah, that's how it was.
Alexander, I was actually incorrect. It was actually my mom's side of the family that came over on the Titanic. Because they were the
Guggenheims.
Irish side, and the Irish were at the bottom of the ship. If my great
They were,
grandfather had
yeah.
been on that ship, he more than I'm talking like
Very
90,
more than likely would have
95%
died.
would have died.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely, he would.
100% would have died. I would go up there and say 100%.
100% he
If
would.
my great grandfather actually, and it was my mother's side, Mom, I know you're gonna watch this because you asked me about this shit. You're going to watch this. It was on my mother's side, but on top of that,
Hi,
on
Mama Hubert.
my dad's side, the Hubert family, my other great grandfather was supposed to be on the Titanic as well from England. And he wouldn't have been as low. And like Mike said, it was like A, B, C, D, E. You had Scottish row. Right above it was the Irish row. And those were the individuals. Like A and B were like the Guggenheims, the Hersheys, the people who were going to actually change and formulate the American economy, which would have been much different than what it is 100 years on now. To where like to which we will touch. He and I have extensively touched on that. But like going back to like the E's and the D's, the Irish and the Scottish row, I mean those motherfuckers at the bottom.
Couldn't have cared less about
like,
them.
When the Titanic went underwater, I'm talking like you said, split in half and went down. Of the 1,500 people that died, 1,000 were on that ship when it straight down. I mean, that's how many were still on the ship.
1,500.
But again, you know what's crazy about these numbers?
Yeah, over 1,000, like 1,500.
Over
still,
1,000.
Like on that thing when it
this
went
was
under.
1912, over 100 years ago. Our population has increased so much, and we're so on top
That's
of
a
each
great
other.
question. How much of what that
and
was
we're
up is
so
Yeah.
hyper aware of each
Yeah.
other that it's really hard for a 26-year-old today to really digest. Because I go to a football stadium full of 40,000 people.
I'll put it into perspective for you. Is that outside of warfare, peacetime, this is the fourth largest maritime disaster to ever happen in history. The fourth. And that was
but that's excluding
over
all war.
100 years ago.
That's
Fun
excluding
fact.
all war, which is a lot.
Fun
And
fact.
then when I go 4, that means there were 3 other just maritime accidents
Hey.
that blew that out of the water. What was that, a cruise ship?
Well, so the two of them, the first two happened in the 80s.
The Carnival Cruise was like, yay!
No, they were it was in China, and I believe the other one was like, it was,
I know the other one.
what?
Okay, so it is related to the Titanic. So think 30 years on, literally almost 30 years to the day on, during World War II, the Nazis, I'm not joking here, I hope this doesn't get you demonetized or whatever, but the Nazis...
There's no money.
No
no money.
So the Nazis put out a German Titanic propaganda movie, and I shit you not, this is 100% true. I found this out last night researching for this podcast. So this movie was to highlight, and again, it's a Nazi propaganda. It was to show the White Star Line Corporation as this American capitalistic, like evil organization. And they use like some fictitious name and some very real names like Captain Smith and Lightoller and all of those. They were actually on the Titanic, right? They used an actual ship though that transferred, if I'm not mistaken, which I very well could be, and you know the Facebook forum, correct me, but it was Jewish concentration people were being transferred and left as prisoners on this ship. And 4 days later, the British Royal Navy and Air Force swooped in. And this is near the end of World War II. So, like, the reason this movie, this German propaganda movie, wasn't actually put out to the public is they started losing the war. And everyone on the Titanic is obviously panicking because this fucking ship in the middle of the North Atlantic is sinking. They didn't want to freak out the German people because they were starting to lose the war. And they didn't want them to relate it to the actual war sinking. And not before Mike interjects, because I know he found something, is... So this ship, and I think it was like called the Capricorn or the Cap Orkin or something like that. It didn't have the red symbol of like a medical boat, because in wartime rules, if it's got a red symbol of medical, you can't attack it. It didn't. It looked like a normal barge ship or embargo ship for the German army. So the Royal Air Force came in and bombed the living shit out of it. 5,000 Jewish concentration camp survivors were on it. And again, they
Survivors?
don't know. Just survive. Yeah, they're alive. Like they're just like being transferred.
They survived this?
No. They survived like Auschwitz and all that. Put on this boat, died because of this. Because they don't know this is they think it's a German occupied ship, not full of Jewish concentration camp survivors.
We're talking about the Titanic here.
But it was made.
That's one of the ones that was a.
It was made as a prop for their Titanic.
I just want to ask Will one question. So the Nazis wanted to make a movie about the Titanic for propaganda to make America out to be a bad guy, and in pursuit of filming this movie, they made a boat full of Jews, sent it out, and the English attacked it.
Yeah, but they didn't make
what?
But the boat,
dude, I want to do a podcast on that.
But the boat they used though was a wartime ship that they just happened to be like, okay, well on this Tuesday we got to load them up.
And that's what I was saying is that if you look at peacetime versus wartime, this is what I was saying is that number one happened in 1987, like 4,400 people lost their lives in the Philippines, and then it was like 2,700 people lost in 1948, but then it was this one, which I remember looking up, the Sultana, which is super fucked up. 1,100 people died in 1865 because the steamboat exploded. Underneath that was... No, wait, actually, no, I fucked up. There was a different one. But the Titanic was a fourth. And so there was a different one that had, I think it was this Taiping in China. But the RMS Titanic was the fourth peacetime.
Yeah, peacetime.
So it was like there was
this
no
is a wartime
war.
ship that happened.
Right.
It just was in relation because it was made in honor of the Titanic, and it was used as a prop for the movie.
Dude,
so there is
using human lives as a prop for a movie is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is insanity.
There's a video on YouTube, and it's called like the Nazi Titanic propaganda movie.
All right,
it's like 20 minutes long. And
but again, you know, like Dick Cheney would never use a couple thousand people in a giant building to make billions of dollars in the Middle East. Continue.
All right, so the Titanic. Mike.
So we were on the Titanic. So I'm glad you brought me here to talk about the fucking Titanic. So we were saying before we got on that like 20-minute tangent. So the Titanic is like, yo, we are hella fast, and we're going to Halifax our way straight to New York. And so they're going, and...
I hate that fucking pun. Whatever you just did, continue.
Well, anyways, they're going, hey, we're going straight towards there. I don't give a shit, let's go. And the crow's nest, they're out there, they're just probably fucking playing euchre or something, and they're just like, hey dude, it's kind of cold, you know, it's fine, like whatever. And then the 24-year-old dude, he's like,
I can't see.
No, he's chilling, and he's like, ha, it's your
like,
girl.
I don't see
and then
nothing.
he looks out and he's like, that looks like an iceberg, don't it? And then the other dude that was with him, he's like, shit, that's an iceberg. So then they start ringing the bell. Like fucking crazy. They're like, dude, iceberg, dead ahead, holy shit, fuck my ass, like, iceberg's happening. And so the bridge starts freaking out. All the officers are like, shit, there's an iceberg. So then, I'm pretty sure if
Jack and Rose are mid-coitus while this is happening.
He's showing her his Pokemon cards at the moment. So... they're going ham, and if I remember correctly, which I may be wrong, Edward Smith, the captain, was asleep. He was asleep at the time. But the bridge, they're like all the officers and all that shit, they're scrambling. They're like, fuck, what do we do? And the one officer, and I can't even fucking write it. I remember who was the one that ordered that said, like, everything to port, like shut the engines down, like let's go. So they shut all the engines down. They tried to whip a Yui on this one, and they're literally just sitting there. Like, could you imagine a more like fucking intense moment when all of your authoritative guys are looking through these fucking windows, just like going like this? And just watching this iceberg, which is granted, this ship is already the size of a fucking building. This iceberg was even bigger. Like it was double the size in terms of height.
So I
And
got
you
a
were-
real question for you then. Before again,
Sure.
sorry, not to cut you off, but if this iceberg is so much bigger than the ship, when you're at that moment of like, oh my god, look
Yeah.
at the size of it. How close did it have to get for you to see it? If it's that big,
So
you think
according
was
to
the guy that didn't have
according to
binoculars not paying attention, and then he was like, "No, I should've been
according
watching."
to the testimony, even though it was a clear night, there was haze, and it wasn't until they actually saw it come into view. If they would have binoculars, they would have seen it. Whatever. But now, granted, a ship doesn't pull a fucking Yui. You know what I mean? A ship literally
a
turns
ship
like
this
a
size.
degree. Like it's so big. It's such a big fucking ship. So, anyways, they're like. All the officers are literally just watching as this fucking iceberg is just slowly encroaching on their position, and then they finally are like, they're all like, we're gonna miss it, we're gonna miss it, we're gonna miss it, we're gonna miss it, and then.
And here's the thing, though, is it's like Mike said, it hitting. It wasn't like a complete direct collision.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It wasn't. It was like enough to where like
They literally grazed it. They grazed. So here's the even more fucked up part about it is that the iceberg, the whole epitome of tip of the iceberg kind of thing. So the iceberg starts off and then gets bigger as it goes underneath water, right?
Yeah.
They actually drifted enough away from it that, like Will said, they didn't actually hit this thing head on. They grazed it. But that was their downfall, was the underneath of the iceberg actually grazed the bottom of the ship right fucking to like the starboard side of the heel. So it was like they just put a huge fucking gash on the bottom of the ship through the first six watertight compartments. So
How many water tank compartments on there? Just curious. Do you have an idea?
It's like no.
You
There's
just said the first 6.
yeah. Well, there's 6. I think there's like probably 15 somewhere around there.
Oh god.
There's a good amount.
A little less than half.
So
Wow.
yeah, that sounds about right. Like 15. I think that's about right. So anyways. They graze and they cut open 6 of the watertight compartments. Now, granted, from an engineering standpoint, this ship was meant to stay afloat with 4 of the watertight compartments flooded. So they fucked up 6 of them. So immediately, now this is actually, they touch on this in the movie, is that, and this is one of those super quick scenes that, again, nobody really thinks of, is that the second they hit that iceberg and they graze the bottom, so the first couple are watertight compartments until you get to boiler room 6.
Yeah.
Now, ironically, boiler room 6 is the 6th compartment because it's all compartmentalized. All the engine rooms where the steam boilers are after 5 are watertight compartments. So the 6th boiler room, which is technically the first boiler room in the arrangement, is the 6th compartment. So anyway, so imagine you don't know fucking better. You're some jackoff that's shoveling coal into a giant fucking steam boiler that's twice the size of this room, and all of a sudden that wall right there bursts open with seawater. Like you're dead.
So here's my question for you. Okay, whoa. That's a heavy point. So the only question I had...
Watch the movie. It's fucked up. It's fucked up.
Okay, dude, that's the other thing. I wish I had more time. The one thing I wanted to do before this podcast was rewatch that freaking movie because I watched it when
what was your question?
I was a freaking infant.
Go with your question.
But with a scene like that, when you make a point of and then water just bursts through.
Yes.
Was the water bursting through to
absolutely.
a man? No, to a man in the coal mine. Was that water bursting through from, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
Was that water bursting through from the literal scrape, or was it from
the scrape? Scrape.
Okay. So he's sitting there and he just sees the wall burst and an ice cube that's the size of the wall just taking out the freaking wall.
You would literally just the walls to you would just explode.
Yeah.
You would just literally with water.
And then he was off. He was turned off like a switch.
Here's the
wall
crazy
burst
part.
and then he was off.
He was working, looked up, dead.
And we're not. So here's this isn't even things went wrong. Hey, you want to know something really cool? This is not even this something went wrong. This was actually went right. It's just super fucked up. Is that they showed in the movie? Is that they were so technologically advanced on this ship. They actually read into the engineering of those doors. Those doors were controlled 3 ways. Those doors were controlled manually. They were controlled electrically and they were controlled automatically. So if in certain situations that arise, crew members could manually close the watertight doors between each compartment, watertight compartment. Next is that they were controlled electrically from the bridge. So they had a control board and a button would control, and it would close the door and seal it shut. The last was automatic. There was a pressure system built into the door that would detect water on the floor, and if water rose to a certain amount on the floor, it automatically tripped a switch and closed the door. Now, granted, here's the fucked up part. Do you know how many people working in those compartments that door closed down on and killed? Like water. Okay, now granted, this wall exploded and water started bursting in. Let's not say you're like, oh fuck, you didn't die and you came to and you realized, holy shit, there's water. What the fuck? I gotta get out of here. And you went up to a watertight door that is fucking closed.
How many?
I don't know the exact amount, but that happened.
I don't know. Like,
I thought you
all
asked
the people. No, all the people working.
I thought he asked. Okay, so here I got a question for you then. Okay, when you're talking about these automatic doors, and then we talk about 15 different compartments, are those the doors separating each individual compartment?
Yes.
All right,
okay.
so that, and I'll get to that more towards like the sinking in terms of the bulkheads and everything. So anyways, these doors fucking like, even though the bridge electrically closed them, so this was actually a conscious decision of like, hey, there's people down there, we need to save ourselves, and there's like an elevator, like press all the buttons, like close everything down, you know what I mean? They close everything down. So the Titanic broke 6 compartments. Now granted, it can only sustain 4, you know what I mean? Before the ships, before the what is it? The front. Oh my God! You have
the
port,
bow?
starboard, bow. Thank you. Before the bow goes under, and so it can only sustain 4. So they designed it for 4. It had broke 6. So it's filling all the watertight doors shut. Okay. So all the watertight doors are shut.
It's still filling it. Doors are shut. Still.
So
filling.
yes,
filling,
and
yeah,
so
still
it is. It is literally. So like I was saying, it is sinking. So the captain, he's obviously in this whole commotion.
Wait. Now, I hate to do this to you.
Do it.
We are now at the breaking point. We got to go into part 2.
Let's go into part 2.
We are at, but again, so again, guys, this is, you got to come back in a couple of days. In a couple of days, part 2's coming. The sinking's coming. We haven't even gotten to the ship sinking.
you thought you gave a shit? Now you do.
Now you really care.
Now you care. We haven't even scratched the surface
of the hull.
But okay, guys, in light of that, I love it. But it's too fun. We barely even scratched the tip of the iceberg.
We're going under at this point.
No, exactly. Amen. I can't get enough. In light of that, Mike, tell them to check out your band. Plug yourself, my guy.
Shameless self-plug, even though I was enticed to do so. Quick mystery. Follow us on Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, FarmersOnly.com, FreeCreditReport.com, all the social media that you know. It doesn't matter.
And check out Will on the Rethink Take podcast.
I got nothing. I'm
Exactly.
literally nobody.
But again, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and guys, unfortunately, we'll catch you in a couple of days when you can find out how this ship truly sinks. Thanks, Mike. Peace.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't think that's a relevant question.
Perfect.
I don't think so. This is about our lives. This is about American lives. And it should not be partisan. Science should not be partisan.
At some point, the daily drumbeat of depression and terror veers into panic porn. FDR said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
I think the question is,
News sources have to rein it in.
I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
We need the news to calm down and treat us like